The long-running battle for the collection and usage of the value-added tax in Nigeria continues to rumble on, and given recent pronouncements and actions by the contending parties, there seems to be more of that in store for governments at all levels, as well as economic players. As we continue to keep track of the development, we are now being joined by Dr. Kriz David, a financial futurist. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us here on Newsday.
All right, so there's this ongoing battle between the state and the federal government. Let's get your take on who should really be championing this VAT discussion.
Okay, so the legal tussle between federal and state and to some extent some sentiment regarding North versus South, or maybe political sentiment. But I, as a futurist, I like to look at this issue as a nation. What is best for the nation? And I'm looking at it from that narrow perspective. Now, the figures that have been read out on VAT collection as at last year is 1.3 trillion. And this collection has been done centrally. Now, as a nation, I think the question we should be asking ourselves, if for the past 28 years, that is from 1994 till 2020, the amount that we've collected from VAT is just 1.3 trillion. Are we doing well as a nation? So that is how I view this discussion. And that is what I want the governors and policy makers to look at, rather than saying, okay, this state is collecting and you are getting little. If we look at it holistically, because tax is a derivative and not an arbitrary payment. So it depends on the economic activities that have been carried out in a nation. So if you look at what is the GDP of Nigeria as at today, and there is a model that the World Bank has established that for any nation to attain economic development and inclusive prosperity, then the tax revenue that that nation must generate from its activity must be 15%. That is minimum 15%. And in Africa, we have average of 16%. But in Nigeria, we are doing 6%. So that tells you that we are not doing well as a nation. So the focus here should be, how do we rethink our tax functions so that we can get enough revenue from taxation based on the economic activities that are being carried out in the country.
All right, Dr. David, if I got you correctly, you will seem to be one of the very few people that has given probably a fresher perspective towards this VAT brouhaha. Now, I want to find out from you. So what you're saying is, it is not who collects what, but that we are not collecting enough tax. That should be the focus.
Yes, but it's beyond that. Now, there is what is called tax policy mix and design.
Yes.
Now, what that means is that how do you organize your tax functions in a nation, which includes the taxing right? Who should be the person collecting? That is, who is best placed to collect a particular tax?
Okay.
Now, this issue is beyond even state versus federal. It also includes the local government. So when you look at the total taxes that are being enforced in Nigeria, which of these tiers of government is best placed to collect these taxes?
Okay.
You understand? That is what we should be looking at. And you look at what is the rate that should be applied to a particular tax. So all these are the things we are supposed to look at as a nation, to look at what is our tax policy? Is our tax policy mix and design appropriate? Because there are some nations that have gotten their taxes right, and they are making enough revenue from taxation. So the challenge here is actually our tax policy mix and design that is not right in Nigeria. That's why we are not getting enough revenue. And using the model that the World Bank have established, Nigeria should be making between 25 to 30 trillion from taxation. Except if we are saying that every year, except if we are saying that our GDP figures are not correct. Because if you apply 15%, which is the minimum, on the economic activities based on the GDP being reported, that is what you should get. Okay, look at Lagos State, for instance. The GDP of Lagos State is adjusted to be about 30 trillion. Take 15% of 30 trillion. That should give you the tax figure that they should generate. Are they doing that? So even Lagos State that we are saying, oh, they are doing well in internal revenue generation. If you benchmark it, you discover they are not doing well. So, and it's because of our tax policies and design. The tax policies and design also include the tax laws. And there are several issues. There are several policies and tax provisions that are not giving the Nigerian government, are not enabling the Nigerian government to get enough revenue. For instance, we design a tax system where the people that are supposed to be in the tax net are outside the tax net. And those that are not supposed to be in the tax net are those ones you are chasing. Let's use the estimate figure of 200 million Nigerians. The truth is that for personal income tax purpose, you don't need more than 20 million Nigerians to be in the tax net, paying the appropriate tax. And you will get the right tax. But what we have in Nigeria today is that the tax is designed in such a way that those that are supposed to actually pay tax are not in the tax net. Rather, you just have a few who are now being overburdened with taxes. So the issue we should be discussing in Nigeria is to rethink our tax policy and design, not just who collects VAT between federal and state.
So yes, I mean, living in the city or in the country, you will notice that the tax does fall on the heavy burden of the few, and it seems that those who can carry more of the burden do not get taxed as much. But I want to talk about some more of these tax reforms, tax functions that you were talking about us reviewing, or the federal government reviewing. Can you go into more detail about that? I know you've given us one example,
yeah,
but
okay.
More.
For instance, let me take the personal income tax. Now, when you look at the rates, the way the rates are being designed, the highest income bound there is when you earn 3.2 million, you'll be taxed at 24%. Now, that does not make sense. Because if you look at averagely, every manager in our organization should be earning above that 3.2. What about the entrepreneur? What about the so-called billionaires? So are you saying that same person that is earning maybe 6 million should be paying this tax with the same rate with the so-called billionaires? That's why we are not getting the taxes, because those rates are not realistic. Those rates are not progressive enough to attract tax revenue. So that alone is making the states not to get the right taxes from the citizens, because the way the rate is being designed is too narrow. So they are supposed to expand this rate so that you capture the rich, the wealthy, with a higher tax rate, not the 24% that the average manager in an organization is currently paying. So that's one instance. Okay. Then another instance is that, you see, we have moved into digital economy. Now, France was one of the nations that looked at the digital economy and saw that these big tech companies are actually making money from their country, but they don't pay tax. And they came up with a tax policy, a tax type, which is called digital service tax. And they applied 3%. So wherever you are, whatever transaction you carry out in France, we collect 3%. Now that has been adopted among all the other countries in the EU. But in Nigeria, the 2019 Finance Act, instead of us to approach that, we are not talking about economic significant presence, such a nebulous provision, and that is the finance minister should be the one determine if there is significant economic presence. So these are the issues that are giving us problems, that are not making us to get the right tax. So you have different issues like that in our tax laws, our tax provisions. That's why we're not getting enough tax revenue. So those are the things we should focus on. Rethink all our tax functions, rethink our tax system, rethink our tax provision and our tax laws. Then we'll be able to get the right tax.
Just before you go,
our economy.
You wrote a very, very elaborate piece. I've been through it. Lovely write-up, I must say, by the way. And you said that one of our problems here in Nigeria is that we have 60 different types of taxes.
Exactly.
Now, if we narrow it down to 15,
yes,
we'll probably block some loopholes and things will be more streamlined.
Yes.
And briefly, just explain that to us.
You see, tax is not like goods and services that you sell, that the more product you have, the more revenue you are going to get. No.
Okay.
You understand? So you design the tax in such a way that you have fewer taxes, but with broad tax base. And you also design your tax rate so that you can get a higher tax yield. And these models are what has been tested. And that is what the World Bank has advocated for. That the fewer taxes you have, the fewer tax, the higher tax revenue you can generate.
I fear we've run out of time. What a very interesting discourse we've had here. Thank you so much for coming in, Dr. David.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
All right.